Immerse yourself in the lives of the BYU Cougars. This is Deep Blue. This is Deep Blue with Jason Shepard.
Thanks for tuning in for a new episode of Deep Blue. This is the show where we get to know the person behind the number that you see on the field or the court. These are the true stories of BYU athletes from their own mouths. My guest is BYU football great and three-time Super Bowl champion, Bart Oates. Bart, it is really good to talk with you. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
Well, Jason, thanks for the invite.
So let's talk a little BYU football right off the top. You know, this is Deep Blue, so we should probably start with a little BYU football chatter. Since your playing days, you've got increased donor and fan support. BYU really set up for success. You've got all the NIL. All those things have changed, which makes what LaVell Edwards accomplished during your era probably even more impressive, doesn't it?
Listen, considering the program, once you have a program going, it's easy to keep the momentum. But when you got nothing, when LaVell came in and had no national recognition, there's nobody that really, other than local kids, wanted to come to BYU. And it was, truly amazing.
How closely are you able to follow the BYU football team these days?
Well, you got media, so I mean, they pretty much. And then with a lot of the games being on ESPN, as well as last week was national TV. So other than the timing, I mean, other than 10 o'clock on East Coast time at night on a Saturday night, and I'm ready to go to bed. I have access.
Where are you based out of? Where are you living these days?
I'm in northern New Jersey. Just played most of my career with the Giants, and I got my degree a law degree from Seton Hall University after starting at BYU, and then we just stayed up in the northern New Jersey area.
So as you're following BYU when you can, what do you make of the current state of BYU football? Things are going pretty good right now.
Well, I hate to be the guy, but compared to my day, I was like, who is this team? It's like, they good defense and solid, up front 7-play offensive line play, just solid team.
What do you make of the true freshman quarterback wearing number 47?
Impressive. Kid's got some moxie. He's confident. He's it's just for guys. Just telling my son just on Saturday. With my son he lives in American Fork, and so we're on the phone watching the game, and I'm like, this guy was in high school this time last year playing high school football. And now he's playing on this huge stage and composed. Good thing. I mean, listen, after what happened and losing the quarterback last year, and just there was a lot of uncertainty coming in, and this kid has come in and has done some really impressive things.
Let's go back to when you were coming out of high school. Why was BYU the right place for you? Why did you choose to come to Provo?
Honestly, I really didn't have. I only had one other offer, so it was BYU or Georgia Tech, and which was in Georgia. I grew up in Georgia, and so both my oldest brother Brad had played, and then was a captain on the team, and went on and played in the NFL, and then my brother older than me also had accepted a scholarship, and so. I was the third and probably least athletic of the group, so I was happy to kind of just even have something at that point.
What was your impression when you got there? Was it an overwhelming situation for you, or were you able to kind of ease in pretty quickly?
I was so far. I mean, it was so far above what I was used to, or coming out of a little bitty school in Southwest Georgia, and then I remember sitting there with Brad Hardesty, and he was a freshman the same time as me, and we were sitting on the bench early on, during camp, and we're looking at all these varsity guys, and it's like, oh my gosh, I think we're in the wrong place, man. They were bigger, they were stronger, they had attitude, there was mocks. I mean, it was something that a little kid, naive kid from Southwest Georgia just hadn't seen before.
After your freshman year at BYU, you chose to serve a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Nevada. Was that always the plan for you, or was that something that you decided went right before you left? What was the decision process like for you?
It was in an era, right, in the early 80s. Actually, I'm sorry, it was late 70s. And so mission was, guys were, but it wasn't one of these. It wasn't as, this is an obligation. It was like, it'd be good to go on a mission. And some of the guys did, but a lot of the guys didn't. And, LaVell was supportive of it, but he wasn't one that was saying, no, you need to go. I think in my case, he was happy I did, because I was just I wasn't a mature, freshman. I wasn't a kid that was going to play much. And so that was an advantage for me of going out. And so after my first semester, I went to put my papers in, and as you mentioned, got called to the Nevada, Las Vegas mission. And it was, for me, physically, it was good. And, and obviously from an emotional, a spiritual maturity standpoint, it was even better.
Safe to say that you still feel the blessings probably to this day from making that decision?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There was, so I was a freshman, and the starting center was a sophomore. So he had 2 more years, Christensen. And so so I left, and who they brought Trevor Maddich in the year I left, and he was a backup as a freshman. Actually, it was the second year, and so he backed up, and then he and I came back as a return missionary sophomore. He came in as a true sophomore, and I wound up winning the starting position. He was good. Basically, did the same thing, saying, "Let me go for," because I had 2 years left, and he said, he went on a mission, wound up coming back the year after I left, and wound up having an awesome career.
You were at BYU during some of its best seasons, and honestly, laying the foundation for BYU. You were part of that group that laid the foundation for what it would be over the next, decades. How aware were you of what you guys were doing, not just at BYU, but in college football? When you're in it, are you even aware of that?
Nah, no, you're not. You're just, you're in the moment. Just as Coach Sataki has said, it's like, we live in the moment. You don't try to think about what's going to happen or what could happen. It's like, this is what I have in front of me. We got this. This is who we have next week. It's whether it's New Mexico, whether it's San Diego State, whether it's Hawaii, et cetera. There's the old WAC, Utah. It's like you stay in the moment, and that's the only way you can really survive and do well. You can't control what might happen in the future. You can't control what others do. All you can do is, this is what we're going to do. And so LaVell did a great job of really keeping us focused that way. Yeah, we had some pretty unique, some pretty good talent when you talk about McMahon, and then followed up with Steve Young, and we had, those are the guys that I centered to, their quarterback.
Yeah.
And so the defense was getting better, but we had a lot of games where there were a lot of points. It looked more like basketball games than it did football games.
You mentioned Jim McMahon. What was your relationship like with him?
We came in the same year. Loved the guy. I mean, just competitive, just at everything, especially on the field. And he never backed down, never intimidated. It didn't matter what the situation was. He always felt he was going to make a play and we're going to win the game. I mean, I don't ever remember being in a situation where we go, oh man, that was, well, I just want to get this thing over with and get home, man. This tough loss. It never happened. We wouldn't let that happen.
Yeah. Give me your recollection and your memories of the 1980, the Miracle Bowl.
We won. It's just surreal, right? It's one of those things. I just literally, I think it was like 5 months ago. I watched it for the first time, and it was, you know, I remember some of it. Well, listen, it was men against boys. SMU was the best team that money could buy at the time, and they were just, they had all these guys that were going to go on and become, NFL stars. I'm playing against Michael Carter, who was the nose tackle, and he wound up being a first-round draft pick for the 49ers. Just a talented guy. Was a shot putter as well as a dual athlete, and was I think he was the Olympic or the NCAA champion, but he also was just like a silver medalist in the Olympics. To this day, he still holds the high school record for shot putting, like 82 feet. It was just right? I mean, that's just crazy. But this guy was explosive, and he wasn't like a real big guy, but he just stuck in there. And so for me we didn't see that kind of talent in the WAC, and he was, and I think that happened in a number of positions. So
yeah,
that was something that we had to be very cognizant of.
Okay, so you had obviously moved on to your professional career by the time BYU won the '84 national championship. But as I had mentioned before, yep, you were part of laying the foundation for what would become that season and future seasons. How much pride did you take in seeing the Cougars stand atop college football in '84?
I loved it. I mean, so when you're playing, professionally, I first went to the USFL because
Yep.
I wasn't going to be a very high draft pick. So, and I was able to parlay that into, an NFL career. But, when you're with the guys, your teammates, so there's always that back and forth, and, you're playing with guys that came from the Big Ten or the SEC or the Pac-10, and with nationally ranked teams and guys that played for the national championship, and we won it in '84, right? And so I'm sitting there, so by the time I get to the NFL, I'm like, guys, I'm part of that discussion. We've been pretty good there.
When did you realize, and we'll get into a little bit later, your decision, you go to the USFL and then ending up in the NFL. When did you realize that you were good enough, though, to play at the next level, whatever that next level was?
Probably 5 or 6 years after I got to that next level. I was a guy that, I wasn't, like I said, highly recruited. I had one other offer to go to college. I had, I was going to be 7th, 8th, 9th round draft pick in the NFL. There were a lot of good players. I was not big. I wasn't that fast. So the USFL worked out really well for me. I learned to become a better run blocker. I was for a team that's what we did. We were run blocking. We were a running team. Kelvin Bryant, and we had the offensive line for it, except for me. And so I kind of had to teach. I had to learn. I was good. I was good pass blocker. I was probably one of the best center pass blockers at the time, but run blocking was not my forte. And in those days, right, it was running. You won by running the ball and playing defense. You didn't win by throwing the ball. Not like today.
All right, but we'll get into the professional things coming up in a second, a little bit more in detail. But before we move past your BYU days, I do want to ask you, and I'm sure you get asked this all the time, is there a memory? Do you have a favorite moment or memory or game during your BYU days that stands out above any other?
I mean, the SMU game. Yeah, I mean, that was pretty. I mean, because at the time, we were supposed to win. So on a given Saturday when we were playing, whether, I'm playing at Colorado State, I'm playing New Mexico, we're playing Utah. I mean, we're not supposed to lose. I mean, so, those are games that you're like, all right, well, okay, we got through that one, or it was, we played New Mexico and it's 82-3. So it's, those aren't very memorable. But the SMU game where, I mean, in warmups, I remember looking at these guys going, these guys look like they pulled them off NFL rosters, and so going through that and then being able to be successful and winning like we did, that's definitely the most memorable in the 3 years that I was the starter.
All right, when we come back, Bart talked about it, going to the USFL. We'll talk about his professional path and where it led him, where he picked up a couple of championships. Well, more than a couple. We'll get into all that when we return. We'll have more of the Deep Blue podcast next on BYU Radio.
Family, legacy, and Cougar pride come together on the BYU Radio podcast, Royal Legacy. Host Lauren McLean dives into the deep family ties that run through BYU sports. New episodes drop every Thursday on the BYU Radio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to the Deep Blue podcast here on BYU Radio. Jason Shepard with you. So happy to be talking with BYU great and NFL Super Bowl champion 3 times. He is Bart Oates. And Bart, you had mentioned that when you leave BYU, there's this shiny new professional football league called the USFL. Take me through how that process went for you and how you made that decision and kind of how that played out for you, because you did do pretty well with that.
It was great for me. It was perfect because I wound up, again, remember, this was a spring league, so you had to make a call on going there before the NFL draft. And so, I had to, my brother Brad had played in the NFL. He'd been 7-8 years in the NFL. And so he, I knew what it was about. He was, he'd moved around, went to 3 or 4 different teams. So I looked at the NFL as being a very insecure opportunity. And so Brad winds up signing with the Philadelphia Stars. I'm coming out as coming out as a rookie, right? And thinking I'm going to go to the NFL or maybe potentially, but the USFL came around and the owner made an offer that it was a personally guaranteed 3-year offer to me for $310,000 total. And I'm like, duh, I'm taking that because, I really didn't think I was going to play. I just didn't have the physical features to be a long time. Maybe I thought I'd get a couple of years, but not a long-term career in the NFL. And so I said, let me take the money, because I was graduating from the accounting program at BYU, and then I had applied to the law school and got accepted into J. Reuben Clark. And I'm like, listen, I can buy a place, I can pay for my college, for my law school, and I can come out of law school with no debt if that's all I do is play those 3 years. So it was a financial decision based upon, also with my brother being there, it just made it much easier to go to Philadelphia, play there. And he was an offensive tackle, I was a center, so we're actually in the same position room, right? So we're together, commuted in together, lockers were next to each other, we just. So for the kid brother who's 6 years younger than his big brother, who never got to hang out with, or his big brother never wanted to hang out with him when he was, at home in high school, right? So this is a chance to get close to my brother and our families. And all around, it was just between those decisions, right? It just was the right thing to do. Kind of an easy choice at that point.
Right. Well, and you were successful. You won, correct me if I'm wrong, you won 2 USFL championships with the Philadelphia Stars.
I didn't know that. I didn't know we were going to be so good. I didn't know that the team was going to be so competitive. Jim Moore as the coach and other players that went on and played in the NFL. That wound up being kind of a plus to it.
Take me through, because I've watched quite a few documentaries about the USFL and how it was brought in, and it had its problems, and eventually it just wasn't going to survive. Take me through what it was like to be in the league while all that stuff is kind of going around.
Again, distractions, and I had a good coach, Jim Mora, I should say, good and very intense. the most intense coach I played with in my career. And that's why he was very successful. But it was, he wouldn't let any of those distractions. We played our first 2 years at Vet Stadium, and then we dispute with the owner and the stadium. We left that and we practiced at University of Penn, but played down in Baltimore, changed our name to Baltimore Stars. All of this, this movement, this everything changing. And, again, particularly the third year, there was a lot of this. First 2 years where it's like, this league is awesome. And then it was that, there are a couple of franchises that wanted to move on. They wanted to go try to be in the NFL, and that didn't work out, but it sacrificed the league. But in spite of all of that, we just kept that focus. And we went to the championship game, lost it the first year, and then we won it the second, third year of the league. And so I played in the championship game in the Meadowlands, and then I signed with the Giants a week and a half later and went to their camp. Started another football season.
So take me through that transition. Like, how did that play out? How did you end up with the Giants?
I was a free agent, so they needed a center. The center that started the previous year, a guy named Kevin Belcher, actually out of New Mexico. They moved him over. He was a defensive guy. They moved him to center, and it was perfect for him. And he was strong, he was big, but he got hurt during the offseason in an accident and had to retire. So and this happened after the draft, and they were desperate for a center. And I was literally the only option that they had. I mean, not even kidding, of anybody that had any kind of experience in playing. And my experience was the USFL, but it was better than what the alternative was. And so negotiated with them towards the end of the season, because by the end of the season, that it was that the league wasn't going to last, and everybody was trying to find a landing spot. And for me, I was just blessed to have that scenario available, and then signed a contract and went to camp.
Well, and it turned out to be a very positive experience for you to be with the New York Giants. You won 2 Super Bowls with New York. I mean, look, you got the USFL championships. You've got 2 from the NFL. I mean, you've experienced championships in both of those leagues. I think you're one of the only ones that have ever done that.
Couldn't be many, because there were only three championships, and we won 2 of them in the USFL.
Yeah.
So close to it. It was. I mentioned earlier, I was blessed. I was in the right place, the right time, and I was able to take advantage of those opportunities. Just going to the Giants at a time when they were lousy before I got there. I mean, like, really bad. They were, they were just bad. And so for years, I mean, we're talking about for like 15, 20 years, they were like non-playoffs, and they just had made the playoff the year before and was starting to get better. Had the Lawrence Taylors and had Harry Carson, a really solid defense. Phil Simms is the quarterback, and we kind of redid the line. I was like one of the last pieces of that in '85, and then we won it in '86. That was able to come in and I added. I was just saying, all right, this is what I do, and so like I said, I was decent at the pass blocking. I just, I still struggle. I worked at my run game every day, and we were a running team. Parcells was a guy that didn't like throwing the ball unless he had to. He wanted to win a game by 3 points and not 30 points. So we weren't going to throw it very much. And if we got a lead in the fourth quarter, we were just going to run it. And defense knew it, and it was just, you pick it up and you've got to execute.
One of the things that really stands out to me about your football career is all of the people that you were around and able to learn from. Because obviously you had LaVell, and you talked about your USFL head coach, And then the fact that you've got Bill Parcells as your head coach in the NFL. And I understand he was on the other side of the ball, but Bill Belichick was part of that staff, and Lawrence Taylor and Phil Simms, all of those guys. How did the people around you help mold you throughout your professional career? Because you had been mentored and tutored by some of the greats.
It was interesting because it's not an easy, when you say molded, I'm thinking it's more like it's like square peg round hole. Those edges have to come off, and they just keep pounding until it, you either adapt to it, become rounded, or you're not going to make it. So it was not easy. It was difficult. It was a struggle. I mean, BYU was a struggle. The USFL was a struggle. The NFL was a struggle. And I think it wasn't until probably my 5th or 6th year in the NFL that I, started to feel comfortable. I think I had 6 years in the NFL. I wound up going to my first Pro Bowl of the 5 Pro Bowls I went to. And so I think I started to feel more comfortable at that point, my abilities and what I could do, and being competitive. And it's just a matter of having that experience.
What were the circumstances that saw you leave New York for San Francisco?
They drafted a kid. I came in, so my rookie year, I think I was 28, because I on a mission, 3 years USFL. They wound up drafting a kid about 5 years later in the first round to replace me. My contract was up, his was up. He'd backed me up for 5 years. Great kid, Brian Williams, a good friend. And so it was his turn. He was younger, he was stronger, he was bigger, one of these Big Ten guys out of Wisconsin. And I was ready, as a matter of fact. 9 years had started for the Giants. Or rather 8 years I'd started for the Giants, and then 9 years. And then I had played, 3 years in the USFL. So I'm 12 years in, and I'm like, my body's feeling it. And I'm kind of ready to just take a back seat going, I'd love to be on scholarship, just be a backup for a couple of years. I'd never experienced that. So that's what I wanted to do, but the general manager wanted me to take a big pay cut. And I'd been to, literally for the previous 6 years, I'd been to 5 Pro Bowls. I'm like, or in previous 4 years, I'd been to 3 Pro Bowls. And I go, George, I'm still playing well. So I don't, taking a big pay cut, that was not what I wanted to do. So I knew I had to get a competitive offer. So agent went out there and talked to some teams, and San Francisco was looking for a player, interior line player, guard or center. Started talking to them, and one thing led to another. We came to an agreement, and the team I went to the general manager, actually said, hey, I've got this deal with the 49ers. I'm signed with them. And I go, is that your last and best offer? And he said, yep, that's it. And so I went and committed to the 49ers and wound up going there.
Well, and you get to be reunited with your old quarterback at BYU and Steve Young. What was that reunion like? That had to have been pretty cool.
Well, listen, Steve is he was a guy that really, he was vocal about, and saying, this is the guy. I was a guy that would help the team at that position, and he really supported me. And I appreciate him for that. So it was great playing with him. He's competitive. He was a guy. He was still, single at the time, and this guy that was, I wanted him to enjoy what he was going through more. But he's, we all know Steve. We love Steve. So that was kind of we were a good team. We had both sides of the ball, just, future Hall of Famers. And so we're going to be competitive, and wound up winning the Super Bowl that first year I'm there in '94, where Steve was able to kind of get over the hump, that Joe Montana shadow, if you will. And so, I mean, for me, it was, I wanted Steve to enjoy what he was going through, and not have it be this difficult, kind of situation that, it's a do or die situation. It's like, have fun doing it. And so come over, hang out with us. Got to know the kids and my wife, and we had a lot of good times. We'd golf on a off day. We'd go to the temple, together, and just be able to have some experiences that typically you wouldn't do during the season.
Was this the first time that you had a teammate that was a member of the church?
Yeah.
In the pros?
Yeah.
In the NFL?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I had my brother. I had my brother
right.
in the USFL, but I didn't for the Giants. Never had an LDS guy on the team. They didn't draft any BYU guys when I was there.
How did you handle being a member of the church in the NFL world?
I never found it difficult. It was who I was. Having gone on a mission, gone through all the experiences you have in those 2 years, being totally committed and feeling the Spirit, teaching people, seeing that the conversion process, and having this unwaverable testimony. To me, it was not difficult. It was I never felt any pressure, never felt any ostracized. I could go into any event, party, not feel, out of place, if you will. And so I grew up in an environment where there weren't a lot of members around me. It wasn't like I grew up in Utah. So I was used to that, where, in high school, I didn't have anybody, other than my own brother or my sister that were LDS. And so actually there were a couple of people, but all my friends were not LDS. And so it was not difficult at all.
In Steve Young's autobiography, and he's told this story quite a bit, he talks about getting injured in practice, but receiving a priesthood blessing from you. What do you remember about that moment?
It doesn't stand out because we had so many situations. We had events and opportunities to, going to the temple and together, and doing things that, were being in the right place. And so, I had the opportunity to do that. But honestly, whether it was Steve Young or whether it was somebody that was, that I was a home teacher to, it was the same. The Lord appreciates it, but I guarantee He doesn't look at me or Steve in any more like in a different way, because we played in the NFL and had a lot of success. And so, that it keeps that perspective, being in that moment. You don't get so caught up in playing in the NFL. And I often, when I talk to other guys, particularly the younger kids, I go, listen, just make sure that you learn and understand that the NFL is what you do. It's not who you are. Right. And that's a very important distinction to have, because too many of the guys I saw, I spent 6 years as president of the NFL Alumni Association. And as part of that, I interacted with guys every single day. And in particular, the guys just getting out of the league, so many of them, they spent their entire lives wanting to get there. And then even if you are successful, you're in your 30s, there's like 5% of the players make it until their 30s. Then you're done. You got a whole life in front of you. So it's so important to have that perspective that, and the church and the gospel helps, and that testimony really helps give you that guidance, so that you don't get so caught up in both the winning and the losing, right? The highs and the lows, and it allows you to stay at a much more even keel.
When the time came that you decided that you're gonna hang up the cleats, was that an easy decision or was it a hard decision for you?
I was ready. No, I was my 14th year. I was going to just do 1 year at San Francisco, but we won. And the last thing I wanted to do is have those guys go win one right after I left the team. So I came back for one more year, and we didn't win it. And it was time physically and family wise to say, let's move on. I wasn't making, millions. You make hundreds of thousands, you make good money, but it's not the type of money you make today where you're like, I'm going to get one more year out of this. It was time to move on. I was practicing law already. I was at a law firm in northern New Jersey, and so it was time to take that next phase.
What is day-to-day life like for you these days? What's keeping you busy?
I do some work with my son. I've got he's got a roofing company. We help him there. I also have a not-for-profit that I work with called CIT International. I still practice law. I help players. In particular, one of the things I really like doing is helping guys understand what benefits former players, the benefits. I did that, working as the president of the alumni. Now that I can now work with players more hands-on and helping them really understand what they have available to them, what they qualify for. So, and then enjoying my grandkids. Got 5 grandkids with my 6th one coming next month, and so just life is good. I'm very blessed.
Last thing, Bart, before we let you go, and can't say thanks enough. This has been fantastic. I do want to ask, when you look back on your football career and life in general, when you put those two things together, what role did BYU play in that?
So, we wouldn't be talking if I hadn't been there. It'd been completely different. And I had not gone to BYU and stayed in Georgia. Probably wouldn't have gone on a mission. The trajectory would have changed completely. So it's, I don't know so much about whether football or not, but that's really inconsequential as to, what I think, eternal, from an eternal perspective. What's that path look like? And BYU has certainly helped me along that eternal journey that we are all undertaking at this point in our existence.
Well, Bart, thank you so much for doing this. I really do appreciate it. You are a fantastic representative of both BYU and as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Cannot thank you enough. I hope you enjoyed it, because I certainly did. Thanks for doing this today. I appreciate it.
Jason, thanks. It's been a pleasure going down memory lane a little bit here.
Yeah, well, it's always fun, and I know Cougar fans appreciate it. So just again, thank you very much.
You bet.
All right, that's our guest, Bart Oates. My name is Jason Shepard. Ben Hall produced this episode. Deep Blue senior producer is Cleon Wall. You can download and subscribe to Deep Blue on all podcast platforms, or find all episodes on the BYU Radio app. Deep Blue is a production of BYU Radio.